All right, here we go. This is section 9.5, instructional YouTube video for Algebra 1, solving using the quadratic formula. So we got 4 problems listed out here, problems 1, 2, 3, and 4. Different varieties of problems, different types of problems. None of them are contextual, just using the quadratic formula to solve an equation. All right, so here is the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula states if you have something ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, really important, it's got to be equal to 0, where a, b, and c all represent numbers. A is a non-zero number. If a is 0, then you just have a linear function. It's a really easy equation, right? You just subtract and divide. But a can't be 0, b or c could be 0, and that'd be okay. So a is not 0. Now, if this is the case, you identify this number, and this number, what a, b, and c are, and then you just plop them in for their respective spots in the quadratic formula. So whatever this number is, goes here and here. Whatever this number is for a, goes here and here. Whatever c is, goes right there. And then you simplify and find the answer. We could go over all the steps for like how to actually come up with the quadratic formula. That would be for another time, and I probably won't make a video on that anytime soon. Sorry. But if you want to know, like, where does that come from? We can talk about it. I'd be happy to talk about that during office hours. All right, let's work on the first problem here. We want to solve 2x squared minus 5x minus 7 equals 0. So what we're going to do to solve this is we're going to first identify, yes, it's equal to 0. Wonderful. So now we're just going to say what's a, what's b, what's c, and then put it in our quadratic formula. So I'm saying a equals 2, b is going to equal -5, and c is -7. Notice, it's not always a is the first one, b is the second one, c is the third one. It's always a is the coefficient, or the number multiplying by the x squared. B is always the number multiplying by the x, or the coefficient for the x. C is always the constant, or the number that doesn't have an x on it. Right? That's how to remember it. It might not always be written in this order, so you got to identify like a is times x squared, b is times x, c is the constant, the number without an x. Okay, my dog's running around by my feet here. All right, let's go ahead and put this in the quadratic formula. So we go x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. Right, that's what the quadratic formula says. But instead of writing a, b, and c, I put parentheses there so that I can replace them with the numbers here. So everywhere a b is supposed to go, I'm going to put a -5. Right? B is opposite of b, and then b squared. There we go. Wherever a goes, I'm going to put a 2. So it's 4ac, and then 2 times 2, or 2 times a on the bottom. There we go. And then the -7 is our c value, so that goes right here. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to simplify this. So going about simplifying it, we're going to say x equals the opposite of -5. So negative makes a positive, plus or minus square root. -5 squared is -5 times -5. That's 25. Minus, and I'm going to go 4 times 2 times 7. Well, 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 7 is 56, but it's a -7, so it's -56. So here I have 25 minus -56 divided by 4, and my dog brought up her toy. Emma, just try to be quiet for the video, please. Thank you, Emma. She's so cute. I hope you can see her on the video. All right. Of course, everybody thinks their own dog's cute, but you are, Emma. Go get it. Okay, so 25 minus -56, that's going to give us a positive 81. So 5 plus or minus the square root of 81 over 4. Now we need to say, what is, Emma, quiet please. What is the square root of 81? Well, think of our perfect squares. Like 5 squared is 25. 6 squared is 36. 7 squared is 49. 8 squared is 64. 9 squared is 81, because 9 times 9 is 81. That means square root of 81 is 9. So here we get 5 plus or minus 9 over 4, because the square root of 81 is 4. The way to go about this now is we do 1 with a plus, 1 with a minus. So I go 5 plus 9 over 4, or 5 minus 9 over 4. 5 plus 9 is 14. 14 divided by 4. We can simplify that. We can factor 2 out of the top, the numerator and denominator, cancel it out, or just divide each of them by 2 to get 7 over 2. So x equals 7 over 2, or x equals 5 minus 9 is negative 4. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is just negative 1. And those are our 2 answers. Cool, so that's the first problem. And I went into a little bit more depth here than I will on the next problem. So if you're still stuck on this, you can always go back, rewind, rewatch this example. All right, moving on to problem 2, and I'm going to be a little bit more, I'm going to go a little bit more quickly through the quadratic formula part. All right, so we have x squared plus 4x minus 12 equals 0. So I'm going to say a equals 1, b equals 4, c equals negative 12. It's already equal to 0, so I just identify a, b, and c. Because there's not a number in front of the x squared, that means a equals 1, because it's not imaginary, sorry. It's that number that we don't need to write. 1x squared is just x squared, because anything times 1 is itself. All right, so now I'm going to put everything in the quadratic formula. X equals opposite of b, so negative 4 plus or minus the square root, 4 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 12, all divided by 2 times a, which is 1. I'm going to simplify this, which we call the discriminant underneath the square root. Right, that tells us whether or not, it tells us how many answers we have. If this is positive inside the square root, then we get 2 answers. If it's 0, then we're adding and subtracting 0 and we get 1 answer. And we'll get to the case where we don't get any real answers or any real solutions. So we have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 4 times negative 48. Or sorry, 4 times negative 12 is negative 48. My bad. So 16 minus 48, minus negative 48, all divided by 2. Negative 48. We just add 16 and 48. That gives us 64. Negative 4 plus or minus square root of 64 over 2. Square root of 64 is 8. Negative 4 plus or minus 8 over 2. Same thing, we just go negative 4 plus 8 over 2. Negative 4 minus 8 over 2. Negative 4 plus 8 is 4. Divided by 2 equals 2. Negative 4 minus 8 is negative 12. Divided by 2, that's negative 6. So x equals 2, or x equals negative 6. Now, yeah, it probably would have been easier on this problem to just factor it, right? We could have said right here, we need 2 numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add to 4. That's going to be 6 and negative 2. This equals 0 when x equals negative 6. This equals 0 when x equals 2. Right? We could have just solved it by factoring and using the zero product property. I just wanted to do this example to show you that, right, this can be 1 here. I could have picked a better example. Sorry. All right. Let's move on to the next one. Sorry if that was a little bit too quick for you. The beauty of the video is you can rewind it and slow it down, right? You can have me talk really slow if you need to. Might sound a bit weird. All right, problem 3, we have 3x squared plus 10 equals 5x. Now notice on this problem, we don't have something equals 0, which is the necessary condition to use the quadratic formula. So what we need to do, our first step, is make it equal 0. So what I'm going to do is say, well, I don't want a 5x there, I want a 0 there. So I'm going to do the opposite of 5x, which is minus 5x. Subtract 5x from each side of the equation. That gives us 3x squared minus 5x plus 10 equals 0. Now we can say what are a, b, and c, right? A equals 3, b is negative 5, c is 10, right? A is a number in front of the x squared, b is a number in front of the x, c is the constant. Use our quadratic formula, negative 5 plus or minus the square root, negative 5 squared, because that's our b value, minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. A is 3, so we put the 3 there. Okay. Now we look at the discriminant, the stuff under the square root. All right, this is 5 plus or minus the square root of 25. Negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. And then minus 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 10 is 120. Divided by 6. So here we have 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 95 divided by 6. Notice we have a negative number inside the square root. In Algebra 1, what we do in this case is we just say, whoop, no real solutions. In Algebra 2, you're going to learn about complex numbers that involve real and imaginary numbers. The answer to this is a complex number, which means it has an imaginary part. Don't worry about that right now. That's something for Algebra 2. All right, so in this case, when you get a negative number in the discriminant or a negative number under the square root, that's a situation where you would write no real solutions as your answer. And this would be your answer. Answer. No real solutions. All right, so let's go to problem 4, and that'll be it for the video. Cool. All right, so problem 4, we have 3x squared minus 3x equals 10x, and I'm going to say 10x plus 5. I'm going to change this up a little bit because I goofed on one of my previous problems, and I want to talk about one more piece of what's going to happen with these types of problems. All right, so 3x squared minus 3x equals 10x plus 5. Hopefully it works out the way I want it to. Here, you'll notice it's not equal to 0 on either side. So what we got to do, we got to make it equal 0. So personally, I like to have a positive coefficient on my x squared. Why? I don't know, I just like it. So I'm going to move everything off of the right-hand side. I'm going to get rid of the 10x plus 5. I'm going to make that side 0. So I'm going to do the opposite of each piece there. So I'm going to go minus 10x and minus 5. Minus 10x and minus 5. Do it to each side of the equation, and that gives me 3x squared minus 13x minus 5 equals 0. So I have my A equals 3, B equals negative 13, C equals negative 5. I can use my quadratic formula. X equals negative B, so negative 13, plus or minus the square root of negative 13 squared minus 4 times A, which is 3, times C, which is negative 5. All divided by 2 times A. All right, now we're going to go through and simplify. We're going to say, what is that discriminant first? Like, is this positive, negative, or 0? So here we get 13 plus or minus the square root, right? It's positive 13 here because negative and negative make a positive. Sorry, I should have said that. Negative 13 squared is negative 13 times negative 13, which is 169. And then here I get minus 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 5 is 120, or sorry, 12 times 5 is 60. I don't know where the 120 came from. Negative 120 though, because it's positive, positive, negative. And then divided by 6, because 2 times 3 is 6. So I have 169 minus negative 120. 169 plus 120. I'm lazy, I just want to add it up on a calculator. And that gives me 289. So 13 plus or minus the square root of 289 over 6. Ah, rats, and the square root of 289 is a nice whole number. I was hoping we wouldn't get a nice whole number here, but square root of 289 is a nice whole number. So square root of 289 is actually 17. So here we get 13 plus or minus 17 over 6, because the square root of 289 is 17, which means we have 13 plus 17 divided by 6, 13 minus 17 divided by 6, 13 and 17, that gives me 30 over 6, which is 5. Here we get 13 minus 17 is negative 4 over 6. That gives me negative 2/3, because I can divide each of these by 2 or factor 2 out and cancel it. So here x equals 5 or x equals negative 2/3. All right, well, that's the video. If you have questions, let me know. Also, if you end up getting a square root that doesn't turn out to be a nice number, like it isn't 17 or it isn't 9 or 8, but it is like a positive number under the square root, just use the square root button on your calculator and do a decimal approximation. I think the book just asked for 1 decimal spot, so that's fine. We can talk about simplifying square roots another time. All right, hopefully the video is helpful, and if not, just send me an email or come to office hours.